would not have the life I have today if it wasn't for these 4 books. And yes, I know that sounds a little bit extreme, but let me tell you, these 4 books, they completely altered my brain chemistry. They got me to thinking beyond my limited negative beliefs that I had. They got me to achieving more. They got me to actually loving myself. They got me to a place where I never actually thought I would be because I love my life so much. So if you're in that era where you just want to grow yourself, you really want to work on your mental health, your mindset, you want to excel in your career, find better relationships, truly just feel very content and confident in who you are, these 4 books that I'm gonna go through, they have literally done a complete 360 in me. And yes, before you say only 4 books, I have realized it is much better to reread really good books that allow you to actually take action on the knowledge that you're reading versus reading like a million books, because I have probably read like dozens, like every single self-help book that you can think of I have read, but I've only really retained and taken action on the things that were really good. And everything that I cover in today's video, these are the books that once again got me from shy, introverted, broke, heartbroken, insecure, really in my negativity, feeling like unwell, all of those things, to doing a complete 360, building a multi-6-figure business, building a brand, finding the love of my life, feeling much more confident in myself, my body, skin, all of the things. So let's get right into it. As always, these are the video chapters, and what I'm gonna go through is each and every single book. I'm gonna go through who it's really for, what it's about, a mini summary, so that way based on where you're at right now and what you really need, you can choose whether you want to read the book that I'm going to recommend right now or if you want to save it for later. And all the books I'm going to go through, they are linked below in my Amazon storefront along with some other books as well. But once again, these are my ride or die, guys. Like, these books, once again, they have changed my entire life, and I am going to save the best for last, because the best for last, my favorite book, it actually has a really funny story attached to it. Honestly, it's not even funny, but it's really it's a coincidence. Okay, so if you want to stick around to the end, I'm gonna share the story because it's like a tad bit long. But once again, that book, it literally, I would not be where I'm at right now without that book. So the first book that we have is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. This is the book that you want to read if you are tired of yourself. You're just so done with who you've been. You're stuck in your old habits. You're stuck in your old routine. You're just stuck in your old way of thinking, and you're trying to get to this new version of you, this new version that's able to excel in her career, the new version of her that's actually able to have a very healthy relationship, the new version of you that really loves herself. This book, it literally says how to lose your mind and create a new one. I read this book back in 2018 when I was in the really beginning stages of my personal development journey. And let me tell you, this book, it goes into depth and detail of your mind and your brain and why we do certain things, why we pick up certain bad habits, and why for some reason, no matter how hard we try to get rid of them, they keep coming back. And the way that I really love this book, because the way Joe Dispenza really structured it is based on 3 sections. So the first section, it all talks about kind of like the science behind you, right? So it talks about the habits, it talks about your environment, it talks about your body. The second part of this book talks about your brain and meditation. Now, you guys already know I am big into meditation, because when you can quiet your mind, you can actually get to your subconscious brain. That is where your habits, your emotions, your personality, your negative beliefs, your limiting beliefs are stored, and that is how you can reprogram it. And then the third section of this book, it talks about how to actually meditate to rewire your brain. I want to say this was the book that I first read that really got me into meditation and taught me how to meditate well. Okay, because I've been meditating for over 5 years now, and funny enough, I'm actually rereading the book right now. I'm a little over halfway through, but reading it now after 5 years of personal development work and really growing myself, I can actually fully understand each and every single page. Because I will say with this book, if you are completely new to personal development, completely new to like mindset, the brain, meditation, it does go into depth, into detail of how everything works. So this is one of those books where it's like you want to take your time to really read and really understand and comprehend what it's saying. But once again, if you read it once and you're like, okay, this was like way beyond my level of thinking, just use the meditation, because that is going to help you once again reprogram and rewire your mind. So this is the book I recommend reading if you just want to create an entire different version of you. You really want to excel when it comes to your positivity, your way of thinking, and you want to get into meditation, because once again, it literally breaks down why meditation works and how to do it correctly. The second book is The Big Leap. This is the book for those people who feel like they are stuck at a plateau. Whether it's a plateau in their business, with their money, with their fitness, with their health, with their relationship, they just feel like it's like this. Like, it's not like this, it's not like this, but no matter what it is that you do, you just can't get to the next level. Now, this book, it was actually recommended to me to one of my mentors about 3 years ago now, when I was I think I was like year 1 in my business, and I had reached some success. I was making decent amount of money, but for some reason, I just couldn't get to the next level. So this book, it really breaks down why certain people reach ceilings and hitting barriers that are basically keeping them stuck in their same level of basically life. And this book is really, really good if you tend to self-sabotage yourself. If, for an example, let's talk about money. Let's say that you really want to save up $50,000 in your bank account, but every time you hit that mark or every time you make a lot more money, an unexpected bill pops up, you have to pay for like your car, anything comes up, and then you dip back down. This is the reason why, okay? So there's actually something really cool that I discovered about myself when I was reading this book, and I think it's actually, I want to read it to you guys. It's on page 55, and I think this is in like the first or the second chapter. It talks about hidden barriers that we as human beings basically just keep within ourselves, that keep us stuck in our current state and doesn't allow us to get to the next level. And this is actually hidden barrier number 4, because there's multiple hidden barriers that you may have. The one that I discovered that I had for a very long time, and something that I'm actually still working through, is the crime of outshining. So it says here, the unconscious mantra of the outshining barrier goes like this: I must not expand to my full success, because if I did, I would outshine blank. I would outshine my friends, my family members, people that I love, and make him or her look or feel bad. This barrier is very common amongst gifted and talented children. They get a lot of their parents' attention, but they don't also get a strong subliminal message along with it. Don't shine too much or you'll make others look bad. So that really resonated with me, because growing up, I feel like I've always felt very, very different. Like, I've always felt like I was meant to do something bigger, do something better. And the type of culture that I was raised in was, don't like bring attention to you. Like, you're supposed to be in the shadows, like dim your light. If you like, if you're too flashy, it's like you're gonna get the evil eye, like that type of thing. So growing up, it was always like, be like a woman, stay in the corner, don't really bring much attention to you. So when I got into the world of business and social media, which has to do with attention, showing off, sharing your experiences and your successes, I did really well at it. But to a certain point, I'm like, okay, I don't want to go beyond it, because I feel like if I do, other people may not connect with me, other people may not relate to me. They might just feel bad because they're not where I'm at. Like, I know that I'm very, very talented, and that actually stopped me to getting to my next level. So I didn't even know that was a thing until I read this book. So I actually recommend every single like business owner and entrepreneur to read this book. But once again, even if you just feel plateaued in life in general, this is really going to help you when it comes to like relationships, communications, and your career, even health and fitness. The third book we have is Atomic Habits. This is the newest book and the most recent new book that I read, aside from Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. But once again, that's not really new because I'm rereading it. Andy actually got this for me for my birthday back in August, and I think I finished reading it maybe like 2 months ago or something. But this book, it's all about routine and discipline based on the title, Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. I highly recommend, honestly, every single person to read this book sometime this year. It does not have to be now, but this is perfect for you if you feel like you're very inconsistent in your life and you just can't get into like a good routine. You always slip into bad habits. You always feel unstructured. Things are kind of like chaotic going on. This is like by far the best book that I've read when it comes to habits, because I have read multiple books on discipline, on habits. Like there's another book called The Power of Habit, and I've read that before. It's good, but the reason why I recommend this one and the reason why I really like it is because people already know like habits lead to success. Like we know why habits are really good, and I feel like in The Power of Habit, it talked a lot about why you should create healthy habits and how to create them in terms of like a very surface level understanding. But this breaks it down into laws, okay? So there are, I think, he goes through like 4 different laws to really create habits that stick, right? So you can see second law, third law, fourth law, and then even advanced tactics. So once again, this book, it does a good job really breaking down why habits work, how to be successful at it, but also talks about distractions. It talks about how to stay consistent even when you're being inconsistent. A lot of good, tangible tips that I really love and things that I already started to use after reading this book. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but there's one thing that really stuck with me that I want to share that I learned from this book. And he talked about practicing versus planning. Are you in motion or are you moving? A lot of times we are just stuck in motion and we're stuck in just playing. It's like, okay, let me plan out my strategy to launch my business. Let me plan out how I'm going to move to another city. Let me plan out how I'm going to, apply to that job, but we never actually do that damn thing, right? So a lot of times we're just stuck in motion. That's not really allowing us to progress to that next level. So really, really good when it comes to habits, but there's also like a lot of different like small strategies and tactics and tips that you can really apply to your life that will help you become so much more disciplined. Are you ready for the final book? Last but certainly not least, I know we have been waiting for this book, and if you have been around on my channel, you probably already know this book, and odds are you have already read this book. And this book is A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Gikandi. This is the book that got me from making $500 a month to reaching $10,000 the very next month. And let me tell you, I did nothing really different when it came to strategy, tactics, but it was all about the mindset that I learned from this book. And once again, there is a really interesting story behind how I actually got this book that I'm going to share, but I want to first go through what the book is about, who it's for, why you should read it, all the things. So this is the book that you want to read if you want to honestly make more money. You want to increase your wealth. You want to be that type of person where money is never an issue for you. This is the book that you want to read if you really want to understand what money is, okay? Because money is all about energy. And if you want to manifest more money, up until now, like before I read this book back in like January, February of 2019. Prior to that, I read books like Think and Grow Rich, The Secret, all of those about like manifestation. And although back then I believed in manifestation, this is the book that really got me to like really believe in it, because once again, I'm that type of person where I really have to understand why something works in order for me to believe in it. And this talks about the science. This talks about quantum physics. This talks about like how you like physically can manifest matter, like matter, just by like your mind and your thoughts. So I have read this book probably a dozen times. I have it marked up. This is probably one of the next books that I'll reread this year. But once again, this is literally like my holy grail when it comes to money, when it comes to building wealth. Even the way this book is structured, after like almost every single paragraph, there's affirmations, and it says the same thing over and over again. I am wealth, I am abundance, I am joy. So just by reading this book, you're priming yourself and you're rewiring your brain to believe that you are worthy of receiving and attracting and keeping millions and millions of dollars. I will say, once again, this book, it is a little advanced. So when you're reading it, I actually recommend reading it out loud. Like, you don't have to read it like super out loud, but like talking it out loud, because it's better for you to actually comprehend what it is that they're saying, because they do talk about, once again, science, quantum physics. And if you're really new to that stuff, it will kind of seem a little challenging. So that's why I recommend reading it once and then going back and rereading it again. And I do recommend reading it back to back because I think that's what I did. This is the book that you want to read right now if you want to make a lot of money, you want to expand your wealth. But once again, I recommend everybody to read this book, because who doesn't want to make more money, okay? But I want to talk about how I even learned about this book, how I got this physical book in my hands, and how I actually got this book is based on all of the teachings about this book, but I did not know it. Okay, so story time. This will probably last like 5 minutes. So if you don't want to listen to the story, you can jump off. But I gotta say, the story just makes this book 10 times better, okay? So this book, this physical book, was actually gifted to me back in January of 2019. Now, back then, I was in the really beginning stages of my business, and I was really trying to understand and grasp how people got so wealthy and successful in like a short period of time. And one night, it was like one evening in January of 2019, I was going through this person's website, and I'm not going to name who it is, but I was going through this person's website and I was trying to figure out and kind of like reverse engineer how he specifically got very successful. And I'm like, $1 million a month type of successful. So I was going through his website, X, Y, and Z. You know, I just got inspired, right? The very next day, this person reaches out to me. I didn't even know he really knew me. Reaches out to me on Instagram and says, "Hey, what's your address?" And I'm like, why? In my mind, I'm like, okay, he's trying to sell me something, because I'm pretty sure when I went through his website, I put in my email to like opt into some sort of freebie. So I'm like, okay, he's probably trying to send me something to get me as a client. I'm like, okay, cool. I give him my address. And then like 3 days later, I received 2 books in the mail. One was another book. I think it was like Reprogram Your Brain or something. I don't know. And then the second book was this book, A Happy Pocket Full of Money. Funny enough, I did not read this book first. I read the second book. And we just started to chit chat back and forth. He actually had like a romantic interest in me, but that's not the reason why he sent this book. Long story short, he ended up flying me out to Miami. This was back when I was actually living in Iowa, because he just wanted to get to know me more. And back then I was in that season where I was single. Like I had just gone through like a really bad breakup. I think I was like 6 months fresh out of that break. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just go for it. I had met this person like once before, but once again, I didn't really think that he like knew me that much. So he flies me out, and his lifestyle was completely different than mine. Once again, he was making like $1 million a month. He was living in like the best penthouse in Miami. We're going out to dinner. Like he was literally spending like $800 dinners, okay? And even to the point where we would go shopping and he would spend $400 on a candle, okay? $400. And that entire weekend, I'm like, okay, there's no way that I'm ever gonna like date this person, because we just didn't really like align. We weren't like compatible. But like the entire weekend, I was blown out of my mind, because I'm like, wow, there's these levels of wealth out there. And for me back then, once again, I was still living at my dad's house, and I didn't even think that was possible for me. And I'll never forget what happened. I didn't see him again after that weekend, by the way. But, you know, before I left that weekend to go back to Iowa, he asked me, he's like, did you ever read A Happy Pocket Full of Money? And I'm like, no, I haven't read that yet. He's like, okay, go read it. I'm like, okay, why did you even like fly me out? Like, what's the point of this? Because I just knew like this connection, it wasn't gonna go anywhere. Like, what was the point of you sending me these books and flying me out? He's like, it'll make sense in the future. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. So once again, long story short, I go back to Iowa, we chit chat, whatever, never see him again, nothing happens. But I end up reading this book, and this book made sense of why he actually sent me that book and why I had that experience. And the reason why that happened is because that night when I was looking at this website, I was putting so much energy into trying to figure out how wealth actually occurs in these type of people's lives. So since my energy was so strong, I physically manifested this book that allowed me to learn about wealth and then also allowed me to experience wealth when I went to Miami. And then Wednesday and after I read this book, the very next month, I made my first $10,000 that month when I never had made $500 before. And let me tell you guys, that is one of the most craziest experiences I have ever had in my life because it honestly just did not make sense. It was literally out of thin air that happened. And let me tell you, once you actually read this book, you will understand 10 times more of this story and what it actually means. But after I read this book and then thinking back and looking back at that entire experience, I'm like, oh my gosh, I manifested it. And this all happened for a reason because I was in that period of my life where I really wanted to know and I really wanted to experience wealth. And since I put so much energy towards it, I physically manifested a book and experience that led me down the path of building my own business, actually moving to Florida now. That book, I gotta say, like that book, this is my favorite book of all times. So if it's one book that you guys read from these 4 books, it's this one right here. But I hope you guys enjoyed the book series. I hope you guys enjoyed my story because I honestly have never shared that story. So if you guys actually did watch the end, you now know one small thing about my journey that was probably one of the craziest experiences for me. But as always, these books, once again, they're linked in my Amazon storefront in the description. So if you want to grab one of them, you can. But that's all for this video. I love you guys so much. And until next time, make sure that you stay unforgettable.